So let's look at it. Verse 3. For by the grace given me, that's his apostolic gift, I say to every one of you, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to, but think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you. Okay? In this context, every one of us is given, in Paul's words here, a measure of faith. Okay? And when you connect it to the context of Romans 12, the measure of faith is the faith by which we use our spiritual gifts. The faith by which we use our spiritual gifts. So the grace is given us to do something by the power of the Holy Spirit well and for other believers, and we're all given it in different measures. And so what does that look like? Many people have preaching and teaching gifts, but not at the same levels. Okay, many people have serving gifts and administrative gifts and so on and so on, okay? But everyone's given a different measure of faith, and God's the one who decides the measure of faith you get. And so practical application would be, don't be mad that you have one measure of faith and someone else has another one. Because you have as much as God wanted you to have, and He will use you for His purposes. And here's the beautiful thing. You're not going to be judged on someone else's measure of faith. This was critical for me to understand in my early Christianity. I looked at other people who were Christians, famous Christians, like writing books and, famous pastors, and I compared them with me, and I looked like a very poor and non-effective Christian. And then I realized that's them, and I'm me, and I'm not going to get judged like I'm them. Okay, when I stand before God, I'm going to have to give an account for my life and for the faith and grace He has given me, not for the faith and grace He has given them. So practically, don't let other people's excelling in their gifts discourage you, because you're not going to be judged on account of them and the measure of faith they have. Does that make sense? God has given you your gift, and He's given it to you to the measure that He wants you to have. And here's what's beautiful. At times, you get different gifts. Like, I'm not one of those guys who thinks that you have one or two gifts and that's all you have for the rest of your life. I think that they come and go as needed. And at times, you will be given certain gifts and then it's gone because you needed it for that time. And I'll give more examples of that when we get into the individual gifts. But don't be discouraged if you're like, man, this person's always doing this. And like, I'm not doing any of that. Here's some practical stuff. When I was younger, in the faith, I thought that every Christian had the gift of evangelism. And so I would listen to these pastors and these Bible teachers and authors of books. I would go to these conferences and hear guys. And the way they talked, it was like every single person you met, whether it was the guy at McDonald's, to the guy you sat on next to in the plane, to the Starbucks barista, your job was to witness to them and turn them into a Christian. Okay, that's what I thought when I was a younger Christian. And so like I started to do that. Like everybody I met, I always had like tracts on me, and it didn't matter. I would force it all the time. I mean, I would constantly, like in the middle of a random conversation, I'd just pull out a tract and be like, here, check this out. You need Jesus. And it was messed up. Now that I look back, like I shouldn't have been doing that. Okay. Not only was it awkward, some people just like looked at it. I had one lady in a drive-thru, handed her this tract. It was like the McDonald's lady, like, let me get 2 McMuffins. I pull up to the window. I'm like, here's a way to find Jesus. She goes, oh, thank you. And she goes, and she just throws it right back in my face. It bounced off my head. And I'm like, thanks, have a good day. And I just drove away. What else you do? Okay. But I don't have the gift of evangelism. Okay. I know that now. However, I had friends that did have it, and they had no problem during any conversation moving it to the issue of sin and salvation, and like I thought everybody had to do that. And it was because of the books I was reading and the teachers that I was listening to. As I've grown now, I've seen, okay, no, not everybody has that gift. Does that mean I never witness? No, I do witness when God gives me opportunities. Does that mean I never get to lead people to Christ? No, I do get to lead people to Christ. But just because this guy, I mean, I was, here's the kind of teachings I was listening to. I heard one story about this guy who would get up 2 hours. He was from another country, like Jamaica or something. I can't remember. He would get up 2 hours early before work, and he would ride the metro into work every day 2 hours early. And to the whole car, he would stand up and preach the gospel every single morning for 2 hours. And I looked at that, and then I looked at me, and I was like, man, I'm only talking to 1 or 2 people a day. Like, I'm a piece of crap. Anyone ever feel like that? Like, yeah, Robert's like, you are a piece of crap. That's my buddy. He keeps me humble. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the kind of stuff I was listening to. I was listening to these like extreme cases where guys were like excelling in their gift. Like, you hear stories about someone, getting a Subway sandwich, and before you know it, the lady making the sandwich is confessing Christ and repenting. And like, I thought that was everybody. And so I tried to do it. I did. And it didn't work well. Now that I've grown, I do still witness and I do get into conversations. But I also know now that I can't save anybody. And at the time, I thought that it was my job to save people. And that was very devastating. And so I imagined myself, in fact, I heard one teacher say this, that on heaven, and when you get into heaven one day, God's going to show you all the people that are in hell because you didn't witness to them. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I was listening to. And so I would walk downtown and I would see all these people, and I felt responsible for their souls, all of them. Yeah, it was really devastating. Like, I just felt the weight of all these people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but to think it's my responsibility to save all these people, that's what I thought. Like, it was my job to save all these people. And I couldn't think of how else to do it except stand up on a car and just start preaching. Okay? And some guys do that, and that is their gift, but it's not mine. At least right now, it's not. Maybe in the future, who knows? You see me downtown somewhere, out on a car doing this. What I'm saying is this. That's one example of, okay, God gives certain people gifts, and he gives it in the different measures, and not everybody's the same, and we shouldn't be looking at other people and measuring ourselves with them. Okay? So don't do that. You have a gifting from God, and he will use it for the good of his people in the way and measure that he's given it to you in. We're all different. And we're going to look at this in great detail in the coming months. But that's a little preview right there.